Hi everyone. So you should have your notes in front of you. And just a reminder that you don't have to write down every single thing that I say, right? You should be listening carefully for what you think are the most important ideas and writing those down as we go. If at any time I'm going too fast, feel free to pause me. So today we're going to talk about pre-Columbian civilizations, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the age of exploration. So here are our objectives. Today you're going to be able to understand the varied cultures of the original inhabitants of North America. You're going to explain the economic and religious reasons for the exploration and colonization of North America by Europeans. And you're going to analyze the effects of the Columbian exchange, both positive and negative effects, on the Native American population. So if we're talking, we're going to start with our earliest Americans. Depending on who you ask, Native Americans were living in America anywhere between 15,000 to 40,000 years ago. And historians think that our first Americans came from what is now current-day Siberia, traveled across a land bridge, and down southward into Alaska, splitting at the Rocky Mountains and migrating south from there. Some historians think that our earliest Americans might have also traveled by boat in the Pacific Ocean along the Pacific coast here. It's important when we talk about the Native Americans that we understand that they were incredibly diverse, that they varied from region to region with different housing, language, economy, food, and beliefs. For example, there were up to 500 different peoples, different tribes living in North America by the time Columbus arrives in 1492. By the time Columbus arrives in 1492, there are up to 130 million Native Americans living in the New World and up to 13 million living in what we now know as America today. So the Europeans were really encountering a world that was much more culturally diverse than the one where they came from. Just to give you an idea, if you're looking at this map, right, you can look at the key and see that how each of these different regions of our country, the Native Americans living in them, how they survived primarily, right? So in the green areas, you see that those Native American tribes were primarily steeped in agriculture, were agricultural societies. And they had very complex and sophisticated irrigation systems. We also see, especially along the coast, we see a lot of hunting, gathering, and fishing societies, which really supported vast populations of people. So Native Americans and Europeans had very different perspectives and very different ways of life. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just take a moment to examine this chart. And then I'd like for you to answer this question that you will also see in your notes after you've examined the chart. So it says, based on the information provided, how might European explorers and American Indians perceive one another? So you can go ahead and pause me now, look at the chart, and then take a moment to answer that question before we continue. So it probably is not news to you that Europeans, for the most part, perceived Native Americans in a very demeaning or negative way. Europeans often described Native Americans as being simple and childlike, while at the same time describing them as being dangerous, godless, and savage, right? And Europeans mostly described Native Americans that way simply because they didn't understand the variety of culture and sophistication that they were encountering. So if we're asking ourselves, why the age of exploration, right? Why did Europeans start to explore other regions of the world during this time in the 1400s? So we have three primary motivations for exploration during this time, and you can remember them by the three G's: God, gold, and glory. You might remember some of this if you talked about imperialism in world history class, right? The primary motivations for why Europeans colonized other parts of the world. We see that Christopher Columbus, for example, was very much driven by these our three G's right here, right? He really saw one of his primary motivations was to spread Christianity. He also wanted to extract natural resources and bring wealth and riches back to Spain. And then also colonizing other regions of the world brought glory to the mother country. Okay. So in the 1400s, if we're talking about specifically the gold aspect of our three G's, our three motivations for colonization, Europeans were very much interested in Asia as a trading partner for things like spices, perfumes, silks, jewels, etc. And they hoped to find a new route to Asia that would bypass Italy and the Middle East. So Christopher Columbus is convinced that he could reach Asia by sailing west, right? And in 1492, I'm sure most of you know this, right? That Columbus set sail with 3 ships and lands in present-day San Salvador, which is an island in the Bahamas. He has 4 total voyages. And we will talk more about Christopher Columbus as he is somewhat of a complicated figure later on. But you should just know for right now, he had 4 total voyages, and he never recognized really that he had discovered a new world, right? He never admitted to reaching a continent that had not been previously acknowledged by the Europeans. It's worth noting, though, that Columbus wasn't the first person to discover, quote unquote, the New World. In the 11th century, the Vikings actually discovered America, but Columbus in his discovery or his voyage was really the first that established a long-term relationship between Europe and the New World. So Columbus launches this wave of European exploration and settlement, right? And so you might have heard of some of these very famous explorers on this side, and the different regions in the New World that they, quote unquote, discovered or made contact with. And these are all Spaniards. So, one important aspect of the Age of Exploration to briefly touch on here is the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange is a period of cultural and biological exchanges between what we call the Old World, which is Europe, and the New World, which is North America, right? So during this time, we see this commingling of Old World versus New World plants, animals, and bacterias, right? So you can take a minute and look at this and look at a few of the things that the New World gave to the Old World that were not previously, that Europeans were not previously familiar with. And then you can also look at some of the things that Europeans gave to the New World. A lot of these are positive, right? As a result of the Columbian Exchange, we had new pieces of technology spread, new products, new types of foods. But something that was devastating to the Native American population was the spread of disease. Native Americans did not have the immunity to certain diseases that Europeans did. So we see that smallpox, typhus, influenza, measles, all kind of ravaged the Native American population. Smallpox was absolutely the most devastating, and the disease eventually kills off 90% of the Native American population, which really cleared the way for Europeans to colonize and exploit the Native American population even more. Just a quote for you from William Bradford in the 1630s, who was part of the Plymouth plantation in Massachusetts, writing about smallpox. He wrote that the victims fell down so generally of this disease, as they were in the end not able to help one another, nor not able to make a fire or fetch a little water to drink, nor any to bury the dead. Right? So these terrible losses from these disease were followed by a period of major economic disruption, which brought upon the Native American population hunger, right, social disarray, unrest, and even further deaths. So that this spread of disease is definitely a negative aspect of the Columbian Exchange, right? So now what you should do is you should stop. You should answer the summary questions on your notes, and then you can flip your card from green to red. I'm sorry, flip your card from red to green when you are ready for your notes to be stamped. Thanks for watching.